thank you guys for coming on to the Regular People podcast. This is a new podcast, and I love just interviewing people and hearing about some of the things that they're doing. And I think it's important, like, to shed light on what people can do, even without, bless you, what people can do without, like, having, a bunch of notoriety, and without having to, follow the fame route, and I love that, what I've seen from what you guys are doing, how impactful it is for the community, and myself being a past educator in English specifically. This is really an awesome opportunity for me, and hopefully, it becomes an awesome opportunity for you, for whoever, watches the podcast and, has a chance to see what you guys can do and hear about, what the initiative is with the coalition that you guys are running. So I'm super excited to have you. If you would just introduce yourself so that we all can love you a little bit more.
Well, thank you so much for having us. We're very excited to be here, and your mission is just so impactful. This idea of giving platforms to regular people, everyday people. So my name is Enno Richardson. I am an education consultant. I'm a founder of Enno Richardson Consulting. I'm a current educator for 13 years, and I'm really passionate about literacy. And so, being an English teacher definitely resonates.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about literacy, and particularly closing the gap between the literacy outcomes of Black and brown kids and their white peers. I believe that reading is the great equalizer, and the more widely and voraciously students read, the better access they have to economic opportunity along with personal benefits.
Awesome.
My name is Tiffany Fontenot. I'm director at Peabody Library at Vanderbilt University. I'm a former third grade teacher in school librarian in technology and language learning teacher, all the things. I've done a lot. I've been an educator for about 15 years and a librarian, an academic librarian. I was a business, government documents, and education librarian. My background and my interest is in literacy and children's literature. I think that from my experience of being a curriculum librarian, I've seen the materials, I've seen the books, and we have all these powerful children's books that represent our culture that aren't making it to our community. And so that's a concern for me. And then when you look at the literacy rates and the research and understand that relevant literature increases student engagement and comprehension and reading and things like that, we have to try to start, thinking differently and more strategically about making this connection so that there is a love of literacy at a younger age.
For sure. And I mean, you've said a lot because I think that a lot of what I just heard resonates a lot with me. And this is for some of the people who don't know. When I first started this podcast, I was doing my planning over the summer, trying to figure out what I was going to call it and how I was going to go about just engaging with the community around me. And one of the options that I was thinking about was focusing specifically on reading and focus specifically on education and how to move some of our students, because it's something I'm super passionate about. And even though I'm no longer in education or in K-12 education, one of the things that I really just felt like I had a responsibility to was helping my younger men and women who specifically who look like me, but there are some who don't, and that's cool too. But trying to influence them in a way that promotes education and that promotes this wonderful world of reading. So when I saw you guys' literacy coalition, I was like, dude, I got to talk to these ladies. So I'm super excited. And I know there's a member, someone who's with the group who couldn't make it today. What was his name? I'm sorry.
Ashford Hughes Sr.
Okay.
He's an executive officer of equity, diversity, and inclusion at Nashville Metro Public Schools.
Awesome. Okay, that's cool. My wife works for Metro Nashville Public Schools. She works at the central office, but I'm sure she probably knows who that is. That's awesome. That's cool. So I don't want to hold you guys for a long period of time. I really just wanted to dive into this coalition. So if you would I want you to start from the beginning for me, because I want to know like what sparked this idea. Just initially, what sparked this idea to create this sort of initiative?
I can start from how we met, and then I'll give it to Tiffany because I just think the story of how we met is really great. So a guy named Cesare, a professor at Vanderbilt. What's Cesare's? Cesare Warren. He's a professor. He had a gathering, if you'll call it, a session called The Possibility. Well, his program is called The Possibilities Project. And he had a gathering called The Convening. There's the full name. And it was really convening of education around the education of Black children. And it was just really a space for people to come. He had speakers. Ashford was actually one of the panelists. And it was really just talk about the state of education. And it just created a platform for anyone who was interested and passionate, allies, advocates, people involved in education of Black children or interested to just talk. And so out of that, a friend told me about it. And I was like, this sounds great. I went in just wanting to learn more. And I got to meet Cesare, and he immediately, and I was telling him about my work, and he introduced me to Tiffany. So I was like, oh, this is great. And so then we connected around literacy, and I told her what she did. She was like, oh, let's connect. I told her what I did. She's like, let's connect. And so I'll let Tiffany take it over from here.
Cool. It's interesting. I was a part of a potential cohort called the Emerson Fellowship, and they take ideas and fund them, and you go on to fame and research fame and all this kind of stuff, and my idea didn't make the cut. So and this was kind of like the seed of that, right? And I was like, I'm still gonna do it. And what's interesting is that as I've networked here in Nashville, I've done nothing but run into people that have interest in literacy. And I'm like, this is very strange. Like, kind of like I'm meant to be here for some reason. And the idea is really like, what does community literacy look like in this current time for us? There was a time when we did advocacy work, when we had a tighter community, when our network was, a little more aligned. We lived in the same neighborhoods and things like that. There wasn't the technology, so you really interacted with folks. But in this era, it's like we really need this kind of collective, mobility and advocacy. And it's really, this is like figuring out how. We have technology, we have this, but we're still not in the same spaces working like smarter, not harder, and working, collectively. So the idea is to like create this space to really understand and kind of make concrete, what does literacy look like in the Black community? What is that narrative for us? Do you know what I mean? And then how can we kind of work together and more strategically to increase literacy in the Black community?
Man, this is already I'm just kind of just crushing on both of you, because this is just, this is such a big idea. And I think, a lot of times reading is the last thing that, I don't want to make this specific to the Black community or minority communities, but, a lot of times just in any community, reading is the last thing that people consider to be like super important. And really, I think it's like you said, it connects to so many different areas, and it is the great equalizer. And I think that is, super important. So how did you kind of form a relationship with literacy like early on? Because I know that, having a parent structure or parents or role models or anyone who can kind of influence you toward reading is, that's a big part. But how did you ladies get introduced to literacy?
That's a great question. So I was born in Ghana, and I moved to the U.S. when I was 7. So a lot of my work around literacy and my passion to support kids and just the, opportunities and the impact of literacy that I promote is just grounded in my personal experience. But I remember being, third, fourth grade EL student and trying to read books. And of course, with the language barrier, while I knew some English, I was an English learner, and I really wanted to, do well. My parents came for the American dream. You work hard, get a good degree. And so, of course, I wanted to like do well in school, but I was struggling. And one of the ways that I really started to grow was through books, and not initially because I actually like really cared about reading. I wanted all the free stuff, the prizes you get, the pan pizza, all the things, So I would like just pick up books off the bookshelves, and you just have to like write the book on a list, so I didn't necessarily understand what I was reading, but I just knew, okay, I just need to look at every word, and then I could write it down and get my prize.
Sure.
And then we started somewhere down my education career, our school started doing that accelerator reader test. You guys remember the STAR test where at AR points, you read a book, you get points for it? I grew up in Texas. That was a big thing there. Did y'all have that? And so if you didn't understand the book, though, it's like a 10-question comprehension. But if you didn't understand the book, you weren't able to actually like pass the test. So I realized, I'm not getting any points. And so through that, I actually started to like level myself and find books that I could actually understand. And before you knew it wasn't about the points anymore. I was really loving the stories and the adventures. And then before I knew it, I actually just was growing too. So not only did it, I got all the free stuff. So the extrinsic motivation was exciting at first, but I ended up really growing as a reader, growing as a student, and I just have loved reading ever since. I still read voraciously now, and I just really believe that reading is a very quick way to help students to really increase in their academics. So yeah,
awesome.
I went to school in during the 80s, and I was the kid that fell through the cracks. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
My parents were school teachers, and they cared and they did their part. And, I was started in an urban area, and then my parents moved to the suburbs because they wanted, they wanted us to have, my brother and I, to have a better education.
Where are you from? I'm sorry.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes. And it was the typical thing of you move to the suburbs and they put you in special ed, and I had speech therapy and all this stuff just moving from the inner city to the suburbs. It's not like I was an international student, or anything like that. And it was the typical thing of just kind of being marginalized in that space. Now, by osmosis, I did learn a lot of things. I learned the rules of how to navigate things. It was a primarily Jewish community. So the interesting thing is a bunch of minority kids, but there was still the hierarchy of where we fit in society. And I was the struggling kid, the struggling reader. I ended up not caring. There was nothing that reflected me, what I ended up learning. I don't belong in this space. So why participate? I wasn't encouraged. I didn't have that one until I think in 9th grade. One of my teachers was like, "What are you doing in this class? You're smarter than this." So I was taken out of special ed and put into mainstream classes, but I wasn't, I'd missed all those years of learning. So it was a lot of catching up. So I was always just a struggling reader. It wasn't actually until I went to Clark Atlanta University, I went to a Black school, and I saw myself, and my professors told me about my history and things like that. And in college, I became extremely inquisitive. I think I was always kind of inquisitive, but I had a space to look at Black history and literature and things like that. And that's when I became an academic reading student in person, but it took me till college.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I became a librarian because, again, of that curiosity, and later changed careers and became a teacher and then went back. But I was the kid that most teachers would count out. Always. Wow. Do you know what I mean? So it was like those few people that came in and was like, it is possible for you to do this. I was told I wouldn't go to college. Think about that. I have a doctorate degree now. What if I would have listened to them?
Yeah. Wow. That's huge. Yeah. And I think a lot of that, the span of time is a little bit different, but for myself, I think growing up, I grew up in a single parent home, and my mom raised 5 kids on her own. So with that comes all of those different stressors, all those different ACEs is what we call them in K-12. So it was very hard for my mom to put that emphasis like on being able to read and being able to really care a lot about education. But there was a teacher who, you know, kind of stepped in the gap for me. And I don't know if he realizes what he did, but from that moment forward, it changed everything. So I was in this class and he wasn't even my actual teacher. I was just there for I forget what the type of class was called, but it was just, I don't remember what kind of class it was, but it was like where we go before the actual classes start and we're just kind of chilling out or whatever. And he put a set of lyrics in front of us, and it just so happened to be a song called Blood Diamonds, and I think it was Kanye West and Jay-Z. And I heard the song a lot. I mean, a super popular song, you know, and it was one of my favorite songs, but I never looked at the lyrics to the song. So I would listen to it and I was like, I know that, you know, and everybody, you know, in the class is laughing. We're all just chilling. But then he sits this set of lyrics down in front of us. And I'm reading the lyrics and he's talking about the history behind Blood Diamond. And I'm like, what's going on? You know, I'm thinking he's just it's just talking about jewelry, you know. But then you realize it's a whole sequence of events that happens, you know, to create those lyrics. And it opened up my mind to a whole new world, you know, and I went from being, you know, a kind of a jokester student to, you know, being in advanced classes and specifically drawn to English. And then later on I had another teacher do something similar. And then, you know, I was, you know, one of the first people in my community to get a PhD. And, you know, I'm dying for an opportunity just to go back. So whoever's watching this, especially you, Mr. Gunn, shout out to you. He's a principal now. You know, he's running an all boys school, and you know, he's doing amazing. He's a role model for a lot of those kids. But now I feel like for me, I'm at the point where I'm trying to take what I've learned along the way and what I've learned to appreciate for education, and I'm trying to find a way to impact the larger community of people who look like me. And I feel as though y'all are doing the same thing. And I'm interested in hearing about like how this coalition plans to, you know, address some of the goals that you have. In fact, I would love to hear what goals you actually have for this program and this initiative. And the name of the coalition, could you please say the name of the coalition? Because I don't want to mess it up, so I'm not even going to attempt.
So we're the Nashville Black Literacy Coalition. Okay, and so our mission overall is to advocate and implement a community-centered collaborative. And we have initiatives that support and elevate literacy in the Black community. So with that, I'm going to speak to one aspect of it, and I'll let Tiffany jump in. But our whole vision is to bring people. There's something we noticed is that there are lots of hands working to support literacy in the Black community in different ways, community-centered educators, families, you know, so there are pockets happening. It's not like we're the first or anything like that. But what we want to be able to do is bring everyone together so that everyone knows what resources. So that's one way, right? Like just bringing all of the resources to a central place so that the families who are looking for XYZ services can have it, the organizations, the individuals. So that's one way. We just want to pull in as a coalition all of the resources, the networks, the programs, the personnel, so that it's so much easier and simpler for people to access. So that's one way. We also have several facets that we want to cover from, you know, K through 12, from the social aspects of reading, so from the literacy gaps and closing those. So when we think about the social aspects of just creating a community of readers, you know, we all shared our experiences with reading, and our launch event was the Well Read, the Silent Reading Experience. Yeah. And the vision behind that was to, one, you know, launch our organization. We launched in October, and we partnered with Soul Creative Collective. Shout out to Jonathan and Sinclair for their helping us to get launched. And we had a silent reading experience. And one of the things that came out of it is, you know, when we were posting about it, just the number of people who are just so excited to have this. And silent reading experiences happen in Nashville. They're usually a lot centered around, you know, a lot of people who attend are a lot of white women. And so I was really shocked. We were really pleasantly surprised to just see how many Black people were so excited to have
Yeah.
this. And so the first event just had huge, a response. And so that's an example of one of the ways that as a coalition, we are working to really uplift the reading and literacy experience in the Black community. One way is creating like this social experience and the network and the relationship. Many times we think that reading happens in silos, but really anyone who's ever had conversation with someone about a great book that you're
Yeah.
reading, you know about the community that the shared experience of reading brings. And so that's one aspect of our work is raising awareness, building community around reading.
That's awesome.
I think it just starts with the fact that what I've learned over all this time is that reading is a relationship. It just is. And it's like, for me, it goes back to that old adage of it takes a community. It really does. So, the idea is, again, to like create this space where the resources and you can like incubate ideas around literacy. For everybody has a piece in this. Like, I love children's literature. I can put children's literature into anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I want to meet people to try to, like make connections. Like, do you know this person? Y'all could be doing this.
Yeah.
And to be able to have this network where people don't feel like they're isolated in this space. If you're an adult reader and you want to figure this out, like, it's not too late. These are the resources, and to feel like you matter in this space to try to make a change or to even be a part of this to, like use your skill set for anything, whether it be spreading the word or that you're a retired teacher or a librarian or just a student who's like, I want to start a book club. Like, we want to be able to have this space to foster, like these ideas that people have, to like implement them and make them real and lessen the barriers to, being a proficient reader.
So you feel like the reasons, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say that the relationship with reading that's kind of lacking, I think, for people has more to do with, would you say it has more to do with like the priority, like making reading a priority, or exposure to what reading can do or what it looks like or how it can look? What would you say is like one of the reasons why literacy is so low or such an issue, I think, with a lot of minority communities?
Information is a commodity. It is. And just like being in this capitalist system, it's whoever has, gets the advantage in this, right? We've had anti-literacy laws. We've had all these things happen within our community over time. And now there's a newer version with banned books, right? So it's like, if information is a commodity, you have to have, the currency to be able to access it, right? And that currency has always been a barrier in our community, not because we don't want it, but there's barriers to access. Being a librarian and being a former, like teacher, I know that if there's a dominant culture that doesn't know how to relate to us, they're not going to be able to fully understand how to get the resources to us, even as an ally. You know what I mean? It takes sometimes folks within the community to be able to relate to the community and express like what these resources are, where they are, and those type of things. So this is to create that space to do so, because what I see, even if you're a well-meaning librarian, if you're not connected to the community, those books aren't making it there. Right? So you can have the best books and but if they're sitting on the shelves and not where they belong, what is it doing? So it's really thinking about like intentional like relationship building, and we have to be a community like working around this. It just, to me, there's no other way. This system was not designed for us, like to fully take advantage. So what do we do for ourselves? It's time to kind of like turn inward and just say, look, we can do this. We've done it before. What does it look like now?
Yeah.
And And I'll add to what Tiffany said around, the barriers. Something else, on the K through 12 level, we notice when it comes to just the skill of reading, right, and building those habits, reading is intuitive like speaking is. And, as we've seen with, podcasts and things that are coming out around, initiatives like the science of reading and all of that, which has always been there, but it's coming back again, is this idea sometimes what you see in schools is, students don't get the foundational skills needed to read. And learning to read is very strategic and it's systematic. And so students are not pretty much getting it by second grade. When they get to third grade and above, their teachers aren't focused on that anymore. And so, and reading, if I'm a student who never learned to read well, I'm not going to want to open up that book and read it. It's hard for me. I don't enjoy it. It's difficult. So it doesn't become a priority for the student because they just never had the skills to learn how to read well. And they're kind of getting moved along without ever getting that support they need. So part of our work is to partner with educators to support them in their work, to provide programming to help families and at the student level to help close those gaps, to help bring in the strategic work that it takes to really help a student to read well, because if you can't access a text, they won't even get to enjoy it and experience a life transforming power of literacy. And then other things do become more of a priority. This video game's way more interesting. I tell students all the time, like, a good book is way better than like your favorite movie. And they're like, yeah, sure, But for the students who get it though, because there are many Black students and Black people in the community who love reading, as we see in the silent reading experiences, and we want to foster that. When I think about young kids, we want to foster those skills in them so they can be adults who love reading and just kids who love reading too. But it does take a lot of intentionality and strategic work, especially at the school level or at the school age level. And so our work is to also support educators in their work.
Wow.
And it's also like the relevancy, like, do you see yourself in a book? Do you see yourself in this information landscape? And that's an issue. And that's something that has to be recognized. Like, the research shows that when you use culturally relevant materials, students are more engaged.
Yeah.
So it's like we really have to, understand what those resources are. And it's not just about race. It's about like popular culture. How can you incorporate those things into, what people like to get them involved? So that's a part of the conversation. Like, what is Black literacy? What does that look like for us?
And I feel like that is a very good point. And I think one of the things that I saw when I was an educator was that I think there was an attempt to try to put more culturally relevant texts in front of students, but then there was a disconnect between like what the state was asking students to read. They would go from reading, they would go from reading a book like Slam or Crossover to jumping into a text that was 200 years old. And then, of course, when they read the 200-year-old text, it's like, okay, what is this? Where did this just come from? Like, how are we supposed to access sort of the language in this text? So I felt like, as I started to leave education, that was one of my biggest gripes, was just there's a disconnect between what they're, assessing and, how we're, teaching the kids and helping them to actually want to pick up a book in the classrooms. So that was a huge thing. But there's a question I have for you, because I want to try to see like what the focus group is for the coalition. Like, because there's, of course there's the elementary school age kids or any K-12 student where, the things we do to attract them to reading is, it can be various. And then we have, sort of this middle group with, people who are, kind of young adults to, up until like they're like 35, and I kind of fall in that area. And then those who are older than that, and their interest in reading and literacy, or the reasons for why they need literacy, change completely. Which group are you finding that you want to focus on most, or are you casting a wide net to try to just get everybody?
I think inevitably we want the younger folks in, because that's where the seed is, right? But it truly takes a community. It's like a wraparound thing. If we work if we work as a community with young folks, but then we have adults who are having issues, we can't work in isolation. I think
Yeah.
that's the whole thing, is that wherever you turn in this space, it's a complex conversation, and it has to be approached, like with a wide net. It has to be approached with like a wraparound service, thinking about everybody, because, we can no longer do things in isolation. It's just not, you can't have amazing researchers over here doing this amazing work, and yet it's not getting to the community. You can't have a librarian who has these amazing books and it's not getting there. You can't have a teacher, you know what I mean? Everywhere you look, like everybody is a part of this puzzle. So like everybody has to be involved in this. And I think that's the one thing about this this coalition, is that it's going to take a community to do this. Like we can't do this alone. So I think that's the big thrust in this, and having the information to make informed decisions. So like the voice, and it has to have community voice. It can't be just coming out of one like pocket of researchers or whatever. I mean, I need to hear what people are thinking. We all do, to be able to to understand that inevitably literacy is important. As long as we all have that one, like understanding, then however we're coming to the table, we know that this is what we're working towards.
And a way that we're trying to, gather all of those components is we're having working groups. So we have a interest survey that we have out for people to fill out, where they kind of put like where they want to impact. And so as people are filling that out and showing their interest, we will form a working group for people who are K through 12 centered and wanting to work with young kids in reading, a working group for writers and authors, a working group for parents. And so the beauty of the coalition is that we can gather the interest and then put people in working groups, and then those groups will go and create initiatives and programming and services to support that area.
So we're looking at like people that are interested in like literacy and curriculum, people that are interested in policy and advocacy work, outreach and programming, authors and writing and research and data. So like these are the areas that we just kind of see, like if you have an area of interest, like fit in these spaces, and let's work to within that space to kind of like create initiatives to move the needle.
Wow. So there's a lot going on like behind the scenes. And for me, the thing that I saw from you guys initially was the silent reading, night. I guess I hope I'm not butchering that, but it was so interesting for me because I'd never seen anything like that before. And I think for me, I mean, since I kind of have that interest in reading already, it's easy for me to come across you. But I think what you said, just having folks like in different areas to actually get them, the information, is super important. But what becomes like a challenge for getting people to actually, for one, to actually care, and then once they care, to actually come to an event, and then once they come to an event, like getting them to the point to where this is something that I need to continue to spread and to push even more.
I think matching passion with outcomes, or like outreach, or like an end result, to me, I don't let barriers get in the way. There's gonna be a workaround. So if there's an idea for something, I don't see why it can't happen. If you have passion for something, it's gonna work itself out. You just have to move towards it. So I think the biggest idea is for people to understand that, like, if this is something you care about, you're going to create a change within your sphere of influence, within what you just caring is change. You know what I mean? So like if we can all come together and care, and we all have the potential to act on something, we can create change. And I think the barrier is like, oh, we need so much money, we need so much this. No, we just need us. And I think it's just getting back to that idea of we can do this. We're perfectly capable. We have so much creativity and hustle, philosophy, and ability within our community. We can do this. And I think just the barrier is believing that and getting back to that space of working collectively to do so.
Wow. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that was well said. I think people have been really excited, so that's been very nice.
Mm.
I think one thing about challenge, maybe like organization, as a budding organization would be, just as people come in are excited, also being able to, have um, clear places for them to go, direction for them as we're continuing to build too. So it's a very nice problem to have, that we have people who are so excited and want to get plugged in. And so just continuing to like build on that momentum. And then something else, a challenge, I think sometimes Tiffany mentioned, people have a passion for something, also matching like sometimes your passion with your skill set, because somebody may be like really passionate, excited, but figuring out, is this something you just like to do? Is this something you're skilled in that you really want to build and develop and create something out of? So helping people to figure those things out.
And I think also with the beginning organization is just getting the narrative out, our story. Like why is this important? Why, why should you be a part of this? So I think getting the story out, is important, especially for a beginning organization.
So with your why, where do you see this coalition kind of evolving over the next year, and then over the next 5 years, and then pushing even further? Where do you see it evolving from where you are right now? Because I know you have another event coming up. So right now, is it a matter of we're going to continue to do these events and try to find ways? And I saw that the next one is at the African American
National Museum of African American Music.
Exactly.
Lots of words.
I do that every time.
Goodness. Yes.
Same thing.
It's at that museum, which is like, I mean, it's very iconic, just to, have, and man, I feel like this is the second one and it's at this place. And I was like, wow, where do you see this going next? What's the next move?
I think it's getting into the community and spreading our story, and I think it's garnering support is the next move. But the growth is to have this network, this really solidified network. I think that's in growing that. I think that's what I see as this, because everybody, and I mean everybody in the community, has a space in here. We can't do it without it. So it's just, to me, growing the network, because with the ideas and the passion, the programming and all that stuff, that's going to be there. But I think having that network and community is the biggest thing. I think it's easy to divide us in Nashville. There's no neighborhood per se anymore, right? So it's like providing that space where we can come together, people who care about this, and share that and make it intentional. We need to be together. We need to use these different technologies and spaces to get together and just say, I see you. That's what I love about that silent reading party. I was sitting there like looking around, and I was like, look at this intergenerational space of Black readers. It's incredible. And everybody just like sharing, oh, you reading that, this, and just having this conversation. And one day there'll be a space where it's like, I'm a grandfather, and I want to learn how to read. There's going to be that person. We have a space for that. There's no shame in this. And that's a thing too, is to work out that shame. This should be a safe space, whether you're an accelerated reader or not, to come in and just say like, this literacy is just important for wherever you are.
But, and I agree 100% with what you just said. And I think it's really a pride thing that I see, with some folks who are older, who don't necessarily find the value in learning how to read. And I was hit with something when I started my faith journey. And, I was in college at the time for English, and I was just doing a lot of studying for like how to read and why reading is important and stuff like that. So I started going to a church, and I started to realize like how difficult it was to read the Bible. And one of the biggest pillars, I wish it was the biggest pillar, one of the biggest pillars is faith and reading these scriptural texts. But they're so complex that I started to think, I was like, here I am, I'm college educated. I've been reading these really diverse texts, and then this Bible is super difficult. I start to question whether or not the community around me could understand the text that they were reading. And, I think that was something that kind of jumped out to me. But I'm interested in how can you get, a full grown adult who has their job, they've done their due diligence, doing everything. How do you get them to want to read? Like, how do you pull them into that space when it's sometimes foreign to them?
Yeah, I think it's too understanding. When I did some research on the reading motivation of Black males, and when I was going to get people to interview for this, a lot of males were like, I'm not a good reader, so I really don't want to be a part of this. And I'm like, no, you're exactly the reason why I need you in this space, to understand why. And I think for a lot of people is to understand that it wasn't fully your fault. There's a system involved in this. And to help them understand that, the way that some of the system of education is set up, the way that society is set up, it was harder for us to be able to get these tools to be able to read. Once you understand, kind of, to me, that it's not all your fault. Like, you didn't have the books that showed you that you were a part of this. The teacher had an overcrowded classroom. Your librarian wasn't this. Like, all these different factors to understand. You had parents who worked the night shift or worked jobs and wasn't, and didn't have, all the tools. Like, once we understand these things, that it was always an uphill battle for us. But we also have this history of community, and we're here for you. So we need to get back to that. We're here for you. And I think it's all relationship building, right? We have to take the shame out of this. We have to take the pride and ego out of this and say that, we are here for each other. There's no judgment involved in this. It can't be, right? We're here to help each other. And that's what I think, kind of that culture of understanding and no judgment, and we just need to get you here. That's kind of the environment that we want to create, so that people can come forward and say, it's time for me, or I'm here to help, in that type of thing.
Yeah.
I think about, so for the person who, the older person or whoever who's been getting along, they're probably doing fine. They're making, the income that they might want. They've gotten along just fine without, having to be a proficient or even, close any reading gaps. So for that person who's getting along and who may be like, well, why do I need this? I'm doing fine. I've never been invested in it. I think that some of the community aspects of social aspects, and even sometimes you have to invest people. So if I'm a person who, may not be a great reader, but I've been getting along fine in life, then what's going to make me want to read now? And I think that's where some of that, investment, the social aspect, one, exposing, creating spaces for them to just kind of see the joy of reading. Like, why is this worth it? Why is my friend over here, my brother, this man who looked just like me, my age, all so into reading books, So I do think exposing and creating spaces where, they get to see the joy, the beauty, the fun that comes from reading, and also the knowledge, right? So I just think we have the opportunity to figure out what motivates people. What would motivate this person to read? Why would they be interested? Author talks, highlighting great books and their purposes. But I think with those people who are just, it's not a priority for them, creating spaces to show them just the joy, the power, the impact, the knowledge that comes from reading in a way that serves their current lives. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's the practical thing too. I'm getting older. My health is a concern. How can I access what I need to keep me healthy?
Yeah.
And a lot of that involves understanding how to navigate the literature and how to ask the right questions. If I'm going to get a house, what's available? Everywhere I turn, even if getting a job or getting a job application or going into an interview, what resources are available so that when I go into that interview, I sound like I know what I know. You know what I mean? And it's who has that? Who has that? like who's the gatekeeper of all that information to be able to navigate my life? You know what I mean? Because in different places, different, like things will come into play. So it's like, understanding, where to go to get what you need to survive. That inevitably comes back to a lot of times literature and literacy.
Yeah. Do you feel that like social media is kind of can become a hindrance for someone wanting to read? I know it was a huge hindrance for the students that I used to teach. It was huge. And then also I started to realize the more I had conversations with adults that even for some of them, it was worse because they were the ones who were making decisions without addressing any literature and were playing more into sort of listening to podcasts and listening to, I don't know, just random people making videos online who probably, I mean, if you're well versed in that area that they're talking about, that some of their, all the fallacies that are coming out of their mouths. And it's like, do you feel like social media is making it more difficult for people to go and like pick up a traditional paperback book and actually try to read? And it doesn't, I guess it doesn't have to be a paperback book, but just finding the text and reading the actual, primary source or secondary source rather than hearing it from, an influencer.
And we have AI around the corner, right? So it's like even understanding when you're reading something, because it could look perfectly credible. What is that author and their objective for doing this, right? And what their intention behind it. I think that it's an incredible distraction. It's another way that you can understand something, but it's something about like grappling and dealing with the word and what it creates in your mind. When you're looking at social media, that's something that someone's already created for you. The brilliance of us and our creativity within our community is like we understand with having so many gaps and deficits that we have to hustle to fill in those things. But if we had this literature and things to add to the creativity, that's where our brilliance really comes into play. But that's why we're so innovative. That's why we're, like we see things and can create workarounds because there's, that push and pull, but it's like we have to understand that social media is just one avenue. It's one way to connect. And I think it's an incredible barrier because we didn't continue with the value of the word, right? So now we have to fight that to, like versus this shiny thing that people is easy to consume, right?
Yeah.
I will say social media can also be used to promote literacy and especially the community aspect of, I think one of my favorite aspects of social media is the ability for it to really show off community and make something appealing. So while a person, might listen to, a quick reel or a TikTok video and feel like they've got all the information, they can also see like someone showing out there, like there are all these like great like Black girl book clubs and, these book talks. And I think, someone coming across that's an avenue for them to be like, these people are reading this book. What is this about? There are all these bookstagrams. And so I do believe there's also an opportunity, and social media is also creating opportunity to really highlight literacy, highlight books, and create like that social, that fun, that interesting aspects, authors going on there and presenting their books and author talks. So I do believe there's also another side of social media that could totally be used and is being used to really promote the social aspects, the intrigue and excitement around a new book.
Or even to have those conversations like, how is Kendrick like James Baldwin? How is that? Like, there's somebody out there that wants to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So like, this is a great medium, like to do that so that you can tell, like, I never knew that. Let me go read. What is James Baldwin all about?
Exactly.
Or Maya, you know what I mean? Dr. Maya Angelou, let me say it. But like, there's somebody out there that can make those connections, and that person who stumbles upon it and sparks something. So that's the brilliance of social media. But at the same time, there needs to be that hand in hand of, what is something. I think what's amazing about books and the printed thing is that you create it. in your mind what you're reading for what you know.
Mhm.
You create something that grows your, like your mindset about what's happening around you.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to talk about more, because what we see on social media is just what's given to us, and we accept that. But what about you and everything within you?
Mm.
And that's what I think, the printed word brings out.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. So it's almost two different like perspectives, but I guess you're like, and I think this is one of the things that people don't understand is sometimes you can be on a team and have the same goal and then have different ways of, reaching a goal. And that's why I think, something like literacy, I'll see a group pop up and they're like, promoting literacy. And then, they're kind of going against this group that's saying that we should do it this way. And this group is saying we should do it that way. And then it becomes like this sort of spectacle of these people fighting against each other or against these ideas, but they still all have the same goal. Yeah. So, I think that there is still a way, to promote reading, still a way to dive into literacy and get it to the people who need it. It's just a matter of how do we put people in these different spaces.
Right. And you have to know who you're serving, right? So there's no like right, there are multiple education. There's so many ways to teach the same content, you know? And so I think what's important is understanding that at the end of the day, our why is to raise up an uplift literacy in the Black community. And however that looks is how we're going to do it. So one approach may work for a certain group of people because they're, if I'm a well-read Black person, the approach to promoting literacy for me is going to look different for the reluctant, reader, And so I think that's important. I, as an organization, we are not saying we are the answer or we're saying actually there are so many other people doing this and doing this so well that we want to be a coalition. We want to bring people together. At the end of the day, we just want Black people reading well, getting all of the access, everything they do that comes from that knowledge that reading and being well read comes, and however we're gonna make that happen is how we're gonna make it happen. So
I think that's so true. It's like the common denominator is that, do you believe that literacy is important for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
And whatever means that occurs in is going to happen. But like, that's just the bottom line. And I think whatever the different opinions are, it's going to be, but that can't stop us from understanding that one central idea.
Yeah. So I want to dive back into this event. And from what I know, I think you guys have another event coming up. When is this event taking place?
Next Tuesday, December 10th.
December 10th. And it is at the
National
Museum
of African American Music.
You got it. So how would people get the information to like register?
So you can visit our Instagram page, Nashville Black Literacy Coalition, or Nash Black Lit, and there's a link to sign up there. That's would be, or we're on Eventbrite, so the silent reading experience, you can also pull it up there and people can just purchase, reserve a spot through a ticket. But yeah, we're really excited. The Nashville Museum of African American Music have just been like great allies. I would say Tiffany, she's like such an awesome leader for this organization because she's such a connector. She knows all the people and she puts all the puzzle pieces together, and so she connected me to the Noel from NAMI, and they were like, yes, and so that's another beautiful thing, this coalition, is there are just so many people who are interested. Even when I think about how we connected, it's like, I love literacy, she loves literacy, reading in the Black community, and we're like, let's do something, that's just how, so when I mentioned how well the work we're doing has been received, is that there's just so many people who are passionate and mission aligned, who are looking out for opportunities to partner and connect. So the National Museum of African American Music, same thing. Noel's like, yes, of course we have space. We'd love for this thing to happen here, and so we had the vision, and then they provide the space and the resources, and here we go, and so it will be happening December 10th, and people can connect or reserve a spot through our Facebook page, Nash Black Lit, or Instagram page, Nash Black Lit, or through Eventbrite Nashville.
So what would be like the ultimate goal for, reaching out to the different organizations? Like, which organizations do you kind of target, or what kind of partnerships do you try to form?
Anybody. Like, I'm going to speak to a church next week. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. I'm going to be speaking to them. Like, anybody, any person who has interest in this. That's who I'm looking to find
writers,
out.
parents.
Exactly. Librarians, whoever. Yeah. It's open to anybody, and I want to speak to anybody. I can give you an example. I was at, I can't remember the name of the little festival, but they had this quilting group there, this Black quilting group, and they had these amazing quilts, and some of them were reflecting Black literature. So I just got to talking to a woman, and I was like, is there a way that if I could find some grant money, y'all could incorporate children's literature and work with some kids and teach them the history of quilting, and then for them to create something through children's literature? And they were like, yeah. So it's like, this is a quilting group, right?
Yeah.
But if you know anything about quilting, especially within the Black community, there are symbols. It's like a form of literacy that we used to use to escape slavery. Wow. There are symbols in quilting, right? So it's like passing along that history, learning that it's like STEM learning and relationship building intergenerationally. That's a literacy opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I want anybody who's interested in this, to be a part of this. That's what I see. It's open to anybody, because, like I said, literacy, it can happen anywhere. There's a connection to be made.
Wow. First of all, I'm so just happy that you guys came on, because I feel like this has been the smoothest conversation, and just feel the vibe that I feel is just this. And it might just be because it's the reading, and those who read, just kind of have an aura around them, a calmness, and I feel that right now, and that's amazing to me. But I'm really interested in myself, like going to this event and trying to find my place. I personally, it's so weird, I have gained a love for like reading research articles and things like that, but in terms of like picking up a book and reading, like I wanna pick up a fiction book. So one of my favorites is Brave New World, and I think that's the book that I'm about to just start again, because I love that book. But then also I find myself like reading poems and stuff like that, and writing poems sometimes in my little quiet journal. But I'm interested to see what it feels like to be in there, to be in that environment. So that's, I think that's going to be super awesome. So, hopefully whoever's watching this will have an opportunity to attend that event or the next few events. I'll try to make this podcast the next one that I post, to see if I can, kind of help out there. You said the 10th, right?
Yes.
The 10th.
And we will have other events in the future. Yeah. Our main goal is this summer to have a summit to bring all these people together that have an interest, and to formulate like, what can we do collectively?
Yes.
So that's why, like, this starting January forward, we're really going to be in the community, like, who wants to partner, who has interest, because we all need to get together to like have this hard conversation about how do we create this space and then create direction for us.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time just coming on. Like, this has been a dream come true for me right now. And I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but definitely this has just been special for me. Hopefully, I get to come and see the different things that you guys do moving forward, and maybe I can help put my hands to something.
Yes.
I don't know what it might be, but I'm just trying to open myself up to doing things like that, to help organizations to, I don't have that many skills. One of my biggest skills is just like kind of production stuff or whatever.
There's a space for that.
And that's a great skill. There's so much you can do. I mean, there's such a connection between, even literacy and like filming and recording, producing. Right. You have to write some things down,
Sure.
There's visual literacy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's all of that. There's a space for you.
See, these are things that need to be taught, because I'm just like, man, I don't know what I can do or how I can, help out. But, it's definitely something I think is super important. But I'm not going to take any more of your time. I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank
Really.
you so
Thanks
much.
so much for
We
having us.
appreciate
Yeah.
you as well.
Thank you guys for watching the Regular People podcast. Hopefully you've gotten some information, and hopefully you can find these ladies in on their in their Instagram. I can't remember what you said.
Nash Black Lit.
Nash Black Lit. Find them, message them, definitely reach out and find a way to get involved with this community as much as you can. You have space. You know the people who need to get this opportunity and who would love to be a part of this opportunity. But getting that information out is a huge help that we need from not just myself and not just these folks, but you who is watching this video. So definitely take initiative and hold yourself accountable for doing just that. Anyway, I appreciate you. Have an awesome life and read.